If you really want to understand the city of York, you have to realize you're looking at a place that's seen entire empires rise and fall, not just around it, but from right inside its own ancient walls. It's like a living, breathing museum of Western civilization, all packed into one city.
I mean, this is a city that has refused to die. That really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? We're talking about a place where emperors have died, kings have ruled, it's been besieged, ravaged by the plague, even bombed from the sky, and yet somehow, through all of that, York is still here. So today, we're going to dive into that incredible story of resilience, chapter by chapter.
All right, so our journey is going to cover a massive 2,000-year span, and we're going to focus on 4 really crucial turning points. We'll start with its Roman birth, then its Viking rebirth, we'll see it at its peak as a medieval powerhouse, and finally, watch it get forged in the fires of the 20th century. Let's get started.
Okay, so our story kicks off at what was, for them, the very edge of the known world. We're talking about the arrival of the Romans, and what's fascinating is that this first chapter sets a pattern that you'll see again and again, this cycle of conquest, total transformation, and then reinvention.
So the first thing you got to understand is that York, or Eboracum as the Romans called it, wasn't originally meant to be a city for people to live in. Nope, it was a fortress built for fighting. The Romans picked this spot specifically for its strategic river access, making it the perfect military outpost to control the, well, pretty hostile tribes of northern Britain. This fortress, that was the seed that the whole city would eventually grow from.
But right away, we run into this incredible mystery. So around 120 AD, the entire 9th Legion, we're talking 5,000 battle-hardened soldiers, plus all their records, their standards, everything. They just vanish. Poof, gone from the history books. Did they march north into Scotland and get completely wiped out? Honestly, we still have no idea. It's one of history's great cold cases.
And this next part, this just perfectly illustrates York's surprising global importance. I mean, just picture it. It's 306 AD. You're in a remote northern fortress at the edge of the empire. A group of soldiers suddenly proclaim their commander as the new emperor. Well, that man was Constantine. The guy who would go on to legalize Christianity and fundamentally reshape the Western world. A world-shaking decision made right there in York.
So after the Romans eventually packed up and left, York didn't just crumble and die. It completely transformed. When the Vikings showed up in 866, they didn't just raid the place, they stayed. They renamed it Jorvik and turned this old Latin-speaking imperial capital into a bustling old Norse-speaking hub for trade and crafts. This was the city's first great reinvention, a total reboot.
Okay, so this really sets the stage for York's medieval golden age. This is when the city becomes staggeringly wealthy and incredibly powerful. But, and this is a big but, this era of glory was also marked by some of the absolute darkest moments in its history. You've got this wild contrast between magnificent achievement on one hand and just horrifying cruelty on the other. So all that wealth, mostly from the wool trade, gave York immense political clout. I mean, so much clout that in 1298, King Edward I literally moved his entire government to the city. We're talking the treasury, the law courts, the whole shebang. Why? Simple. He needed a forward base for his war with Scotland. So for 6 whole years, York wasn't just a major city. It was, for all intents and purposes, the capital of England.
But like we said, with power came peril. In 1190, a horrible wave of anti-Jewish violence was sweeping the country, and York's Jewish community sought refuge in the castle's tower. They were besieged by a mob, and, rather than be murdered, many chose to take their own lives. Around 150 men, women, and children died. It's an absolutely brutal stain on the city's history, and one that's still felt to this day.
And then came a disaster that no city wall could ever hope to stop. In 1349, the Black Death arrived. It just swept through York's crowded medieval streets. And in a matter of months, just months, it's estimated that somewhere between a third and a half of the entire population was just gone. The devastation, both economically and socially, was almost total. It would take the city decades to even begin to recover.
You'd think after surviving that, things would get better, right? Well, not exactly. The recovery from the plague basically led straight into centuries of new conflict. York found itself right at the heart of England's most bitter divisions, getting torn apart first by brutal wars over who should wear the crown, and then later over how you should worship God.
And this wasn't just some far-off conflict. York was literally a namesake in the fight, the Wars of the Roses. You had the House of Lancaster with their red rose against the House of York with their white rose. The city, of course, championed its own side. It was pretty simple. When a Yorkist king was on the throne, the city did great. When a Lancastrian won, well, it suffered.
And let me tell you, no king was more York's king than Richard III. He was seen as a true northern champion, a protector who actually cared about the city. So when he was killed at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, it wasn't just a political defeat for York, it felt deeply personal. Their guy was gone, and the new Tudor dynasty, well, let's just say they had no love for the North.
So this new Tudor era brought a new kind of conflict, religious warfare. And to really understand the human cost of this, you just have to hear the story of Margaret Clitheroe. She was a butcher's wife from the Shambles, and she was arrested for secretly harboring Catholic priests. Now here's the thing, she refused to enter a plea because she knew it would force her own children to testify against her. And for this silence, for protecting her family, her punishment was to be pressed to death. Just an agonizing, horrific end, all for an act of faith and a mother's love.
All right, so as we move into the modern era, York faces two completely new and incredibly powerful threats. First, you've got the relentless change of the Industrial Revolution, and second, the destructive fire of modern warfare. And it's how the city deals with these challenges that will ultimately define the York that we know today. You have to remember, for centuries, York was pretty isolated. That all changed like overnight in 1839 with the arrival of the railway. This one guy, George Hudson, they called him the Railway King, made York the absolute hub of his network. All of a sudden, a trip to London that used to take 2 days now took just 5 hours. This was a game changer. It turned the ancient walled city into a booming industrial center and, really for the first time, a major tourist destination. But the 20th century brought war right back to York's gates. In 1942, the city was targeted in something called the Baedeker Raids. And these weren't military attacks, they were cultural revenge attacks, ordered by Hitler himself, named after a travel guide. The whole point was to destroy Britain's historical treasures. Bombs rained down, the historic Guildhall was completely destroyed, but here's the truly incredible part. While all this was happening, a team of just regular volunteer firefighters climbed onto the roof of the York Minster and started putting out the firebombs by hand. By hand, they saved the city's greatest treasure.
So after the war, York didn't just rebuild what was lost. It went one step further and fully embraced its past. It founded a university looking to the future. It opened the National Railway Museum and the Jorvik Viking Center, turning its incredible history into these world-class attractions. And then, and this is almost poetic, when lightning struck the Minster in 1984 and caused a massive fire, what did the city do? It just did what it always does. It rebuilt.
So, when you look back, from Roman fortress to Viking trading hub, from medieval capital to a modern treasure, you see a city that has constantly, and I mean constantly, rebuilt itself on the foundations of its own past. It truly is a city that has refused to die, a city defined not by one single identity, but by its incredible ability to endure and transform. Which leaves us with just one final thought. What comes next for the unbreakable city?